I stood behind the church doors, listening to the mourners cry over a coffin I wasn't in. My name is Richard Vale. Or at least, it used to be. For the last 6 weeks, I've been dead to everyone who ever claimed to love me. Business partner, wife, children, sister, friends. They buried a closed casket, ashes, they said. Cremated remains after a car explosion on Route 21. The fire had been so intense, they said, there wasn't much left to identify. They didn't know the man in that car wasn't me, that his body had been planted, that the fire was staged. They didn't know I was standing 50 feet away, listening to my eulogy. Richard was a complicated man, my wife said from the pulpit. He had secrets, he had regrets, but he was ours. She was wearing the emerald earrings I told her to save for special occasions. She hadn't shed a tear until the cameras started rolling. The funeral had made local news. CEO of Vale Security Systems found dead in fiery accident. Cause unknown. Speculation, mechanical failure, foul play, or suicide. But they didn't look too closely. They didn't want to. My death came at the perfect time for them. The insurance payout was $4.2 million. The business share restructured in favor of my partner, Owen Graves. My wife already had a condo listed in her name in Miami. My daughter closed her college fund and bought a Tesla. My sister liquidated the storage unit I kept downtown, the one with my journals, keepsakes, and the safe deposit box I never told anyone about. They thought I was gone. Erased. Easy. But I had planned this. Not out of malice. Not at first. I staged the fire because I discovered something that would have gotten me killed if I hadn't vanished first. 6 weeks ago, I found documents in Owen's office. Financial trails, silent investors, offshore accounts, evidence that Vale Security Systems had been repurposed for something far more sinister than alarm systems and home surveillance. Government-grade software was being sold to private clients, illegally. The kind of software that could watch without a trace. I confronted Owen. He laughed. Said it was too late. That even if I reported him, nobody would believe the man who'd signed half the approvals without reading the fine print. You're already dirty, Rick, he'd said. Might as well enjoy the payout. Or retire. Permanently. That was the moment I knew. I couldn't fight this above ground. So I disappeared. Made it look like he won. Let him, and everyone else, think I was gone. And now, they were all gathered in this church, praising my memory while plotting their futures. I walked through the side entrance. Quiet. Deliberate. I didn't need theatrics. I needed truth. The organ music played softly. The priest was preparing for the final blessing. My daughter sat near the front, looking distracted. My wife held her phone just below the pew, checking messages. Owen was shaking hands with a man I didn't recognize, a lawyer, maybe. I stepped into the aisle. Slowly. One step, then another. Until the whispers began. A gasp. A mutter. Someone dropped a hymnal. My wife turned first. Her face drained of blood. She blinked, then whispered my name like it was a curse. Owen dropped his drink. The glass shattered on the stone floor. What the hell? He muttered. Impossible. I walked to the front of the room, turned to face the people who had already divided my life into pieces. I want to thank you all for coming, I said. Truly. It's good to know who's willing to grieve, and who was just waiting for me to vanish. My voice carried through the vaulted ceiling like thunder. No one moved. No one breathed. They were staring at a ghost. But I was real. Alive. And I had returned with every receipt. Every copy. Every conversation. I wasn't just here to reclaim my life. I was here to expose them. To burn their lies to ash the same way they tried to burn me. No one spoke at first. It was as if the air had been sucked from the church. I saw it in their eyes, the fear, the calculations, the scrambling to figure out if what they were seeing was a miracle or a disaster. He's not dead, someone whispered from the back. But the news said, I saw the body. That wasn't him, I said, loud enough to quiet every whisper. The man in that car wasn't me. Owen was the first to find his tongue. This is insane, he said, laughing, but it didn't touch his eyes. This is some kind of stunt, someone's idea of a sick joke. I looked right at him. No joke, Owen. You know exactly what this is. He froze, his lips still parted. My wife, Clara, had gone pale. She stood slowly, like a woman trying to calculate how long she could pretend to faint without drawing suspicion. You can't just walk in here, she said. We buried you. We grieved. No, you spent the insurance money. You filed the estate claim. You moved into a penthouse and booked a flight to Florida 3 days after the accident. Gasps rippled through the pews. I turned to the guests. I faked my death for one reason, to find out who I really was to the people closest to me. And now I know. I left the church through the front doors. Let them all stew in it. Let them panic, plot, spin. I wasn't here for drama. I was here for war. The next day, I walked into my company's headquarters under my own name, using the passcode Owen never thought I'd remember. The receptionist nearly fainted. "Mr. Vale," she whispered. "We thought, you're supposed to be, I know what I'm supposed to be," I said. "Where's Owen?" She stammered, but pointed me toward the executive floor. Owen was in the middle of a board meeting. I didn't knock. I pushed open the glass doors and stepped inside. Conversation stopped mid-sentence. The CFO actually dropped his coffee. "Well," I said, glad to know no one changed the locks. Owen stood slowly, smoothing his tie. "This is highly inappropriate. Not as inappropriate as falsifying financials, moving illegal surveillance software through shell companies, and signing off under my name." Silence. Then I dropped the USB drive on the table. Everything's on there. Every transaction. Every memo. Every backdoor install. I looked at the general counsel. "If you move now, you can save yourselves. The federal investigation opens next week." "What investigation?" Owen snapped. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" I smiled. "You didn't think I'd disappear without a plan, did you?" The chairman of the board stood. "Mr. Vale, are you saying this company is under criminal exposure?" "Only if you continue letting him run it." I've filed an injunction. As of this morning, I'm reinstated as CEO pending formal arbitration. The court documents were delivered an hour ago. Owen lunged at me. The security guards arrived faster than I expected. They pulled him back. He shouted, "You can't prove anything. You're a dead man walking." "Better than a live one sinking," I said. They escorted him out. I turned back to the room. Let's get back to work. That night, I went home, not to Clara's new condo, but to the old house she hadn't sold yet. My name was still on the deed. She showed up an hour later, face drawn, eyes glassy. "I didn't know what to do," she said softly. "I thought you were really gone." "No, Clara. You hoped I was gone. There's a difference." "What are you going to do?" "What I should have done years ago," I said. "Finish what I started. Clean the rot. And then, disappear for real." Her face changed. Something behind the eyes, fear, maybe, or regret. "You're not staying?" "Why would I?" I asked. Everything I had here died the moment that coffin closed. I just came back to bury it right. She left in silence. I stayed in that house one last night. In the morning, I watched the sun rise over the lawn I used to mow on Sundays. The lawn where my children once played. The lawn that now belonged to no one. I wasn't angry. I was free. And soon, they'd all know exactly what kind of man I became. When I stopped pretending to be the one they buried, the morning news ran my face like I was a missing plane finally found. "Richard Vale alive after presumed death," the headline read. They speculated about mistaken identity, insurance fraud, mental health. The media circus spun its theories, but I kept quiet. Let them talk. Noise is the best cover for a man with a plan. The day after I reclaimed my company, the feds called. Not with a threat, yet, but with interest. I'd submitted everything anonymously 2 weeks ago. Contracts, offshore transfers, encryption blueprints for illegal surveillance tools Owen had sold to foreign clients under dummy subsidiaries. I had a meeting scheduled with 2 agents that Friday. Until then, I had unfinished business with my family. Clara filed for divorce that morning. I got the papers via courier. No personal note. Just signatures and an asset request. She wanted half. Of what? I wasn't sure. I had already moved everything into a secured trust the week before I died. She wouldn't see a dime. But I wasn't done with her. I invited her to dinner. She accepted, curious, not repentant. She arrived wearing the necklace I'd bought her on our 15th anniversary. No shame. No hesitation. "Why am I here?" she asked over steak she barely touched. "To give you a choice," I said. "You walk away now, quietly, or I unseal the files I kept." "What files?" she said, though her voice cracked. "The ones with your emails to Owen. The bank transfers. The Miami condo in both your names." She dropped her fork. "You bugged me. You betrayed me," I said. "I just planned for it." She didn't deny it. Not once. Just wiped her mouth and said, "So what now? You want revenge?" "No," I said, finishing my wine. "I want you to know you lost. Not money. Not property. Your image. Your legacy. It's over, Clara." She left without a word. The next day, my daughter called. I hadn't spoken to her since the funeral. "Is it true?" she asked. "Are you really alive?" "Yes," I said. And I know about the Tesla. She laughed, nervous, guilty. I didn't think you'd mind. I don't. But I mind you never called. Never asked questions. Never hesitated to spend what you thought was death money. Silence. I didn't know what to do, she finally said. Everyone else moved on. I thought I had to too. You don't have to explain, I said. But you do have to decide who you want to be from here on. I hung up before she could answer. That Friday, I met with the feds. I told them everything. I offered cooperation. Testimony. Owen was arrested the following Monday. Wire fraud. Export violations. Breach of national security. The press turned on him like wolves on a carcass. They tried to drag me with him, but I was insulated. My signed documents were provably altered. My digital trail carefully managed. The feds knew I'd been played. The court backed my reinstatement. Owen's assets were frozen. His silence cracked within days. He named names. Clara's was among them. She was indicted 3 weeks later. Conspiracy to commit fraud. Money laundering. The Miami condo? Purchased using company funds disguised as consulting fees. I sat in the back of the courtroom when they arraigned her. She never looked at me. Never lifted her eyes from the floor. She posted bail. Tried to message me. I blocked her. My sister never called. Never wrote. I knew she'd tried to claim power of attorney the day after the crash. Knew she'd already begun liquidating parts of my estate when the death certificate was processed. I mailed her a copy of the rescinded probate order. No letter. No warning. Just a copy. I imagined the color draining from her face as she read it. That night, I held a press conference. My first public appearance since resurrecting. I didn't rant. I didn't accuse. I just said the truth. That some people only mourn you when it's convenient. That sometimes you have to die to learn who should have never been in your life to begin with. And that sometimes a funeral is the perfect place to start over. Do you feel like a ghost now? A reporter asked. I smiled. No, I feel awake. The next morning, I left the city. No warning. No plan to return. The company was handed over to a new CEO I trusted. I sold the house. Closed the accounts. Left the keys on a granite counter no one would touch again. I wasn't running. I was finished. And the dead man they all cried over? He never existed in the first place. What rose from the fire was something colder, clearer, sharper. Not a victim. Not a ghost. Just a man who finally knew what it meant to live without illusion. The town was still buzzing long after I left it behind. My name had become a legend. A man who came back from the dead to destroy the ones who tried to profit from his grave. But legends don't last. They get rewritten, reshaped. I didn't want to be a story. I wanted silence. I settled in a coastal town under a different name. Rented a small house with weathered blue shutters and a porch that creaked in the morning breeze. No staff. No phones. No past. Just quiet. But ghosts don't vanish. They follow. 2 months after I disappeared for the second time, I received a letter. No return address. Inside, a photograph of Clara, handcuffed, walking out of a courthouse. Beneath it, a note. She made bail. She's talking. No signature. I burned it. Then I went for a walk on the beach. The ocean has a way of making lies feel small. I let the waves drown every name I had once carried. Clara. Owen. My sister. Even my daughter, who hadn't called since the night I hung up. I thought I was done. But the past doesn't let you choose when it's over. 3 weeks later, a man appeared at the edge of my driveway. Clean suit. Casual shoes. Government posture. Mr. Vale, he said. Or should I say, Mr. Cross. I didn't respond. We need to talk, he said. Clara has offered full cooperation. But she claims you knew. Claims you were part of the system long before you died. I raised an eyebrow. Then why are you here? He smiled. Because we checked. You planned this. You filed whistleblower documents 6 weeks before your accident. Created sealed logs. Left evidence trails meant to be found only after you were gone. So we think there's more. Not just Owen. Not just your wife. This network goes deeper. And you were the only one with access to all of it. I said nothing. We want your help, he continued. You don't owe us anything. But if this system stays hidden, more people will get hurt. You have leverage. And you're already dead to the people who mattered. And if I say no? He shrugged. Then we leave. And eventually, someone who doesn't knock will come looking. Someone who doesn't want you alive a second time. He handed me a card. I stared at it for a long time after he left. I had faked my death to escape, then returned for justice. But now I faced a choice. Stay buried, or dig deeper? I poured a glass of whiskey, stared out at the horizon, and asked myself, what's more dangerous, a man who came back from the dead, or one with nothing left to lose? The card sat on the table for 2 days. Unmarked. Plain. A government seal stamped on the back like a quiet dare. I didn't touch it at first. I spent the time chopping firewood, cleaning the windows, walking the shoreline. But nothing quieted the noise in my head. The noise of names. Of people I once trusted. Of passwords I still remembered. Of servers I'd built and encrypted and buried in layers of digital misdirection years ago, not for profit, but protection. Insurance. Back then, I never thought I'd need to use it. Now it was the only thing that made me valuable. Or dangerous. I called the number. A woman answered. Her voice was clipped, professional. Mr. Vale. We've been expecting you. She didn't ask how I found the card. She didn't ask for verification. She just gave me coordinates and a time. A safe house in D.C. No names. No titles. Come clean, she said. Or come armed. I left the next morning. No suitcase. No goodbye. I arrived in a rented car. The building was ordinary. Brick, 2 floors, a cracked sidewalk out front. Inside, the room was sterile. 2 men in suits. 1 woman. Laptop. Folders. A voice recorder blinking red. Tell us everything, they said. And I did. Not out of trust. Not out of fear. Out of necessity. Because the deeper I went, the more I realized. Owen and Clara were just frontline players. The system beneath them, the one using my software to spy, to extract, to sell, was still intact. Still operating. And it had used my name long before I ever thought to fake my death. I showed them how the servers were accessed, how the signatures were forged, how my logins had been cloned, masked, rerouted through third parties posing as clients. This wasn't just corporate theft, I said. It was systemic compromise. And I was the cover story. They listened, took notes, asked questions that told me they'd known for years, but hadn't been able to prove it. Until now. At the end of the day, the lead agent asked the question I knew was coming. What do you want, Mr. Vale? I looked him in the eye. I want the machine to eat itself. Quietly. I want every name on that list buried so deep they forget they ever existed. And when it's over, I want to vanish. Again. For real this time. He nodded. Done. For 6 months, I worked in the shadows. Not in D.C. Not on paper. But through burner servers, encrypted comms, buried proxies. I guided the operation like a ghost pulling threads through a network of lies. One by one, the pillars fell. 3 senators. 2 high-level contractors. A private equity firm laundering surveillance tools through civilian front companies. All exposed. All quietly erased. No trials. No headlines. Just silence. And after 6 months, the final message came. 1 line. It's done. I destroyed the last server myself. The one I'd built in a warehouse basement in 2014. It took 5 hours to dismantle. I torched the drives. Smashed the boards. Buried the rest in salt and sand. When I was done, I walked out of the building, lit a cigarette I hadn't touched in 10 years, and let the wind take it from my fingers. That night, I drove until the roads ran out. Found a cabin where no one knew my name. Paid cash. Burned the last of my old IDs. I was gone. Truly gone. And this time, I wasn't coming back. Not for revenge. Not for justice. Not for family or legacy or noise. Just silence. The kind only the dead can afford. And in that silence, I found peace. Not because they lost, but because I won the right to disappear. The right to exist only as a memory. The right to never be owned again. Richard Vale was dead. But the man I became? He never had a name to begin with.